Hi, this is Ramirez. So, remixing has been at the core of dance music since the 70s. Legendary DJs like Larry Levan from the Paradise Garage extended tracks with tape loops. The 80s brought the iconic 12-inch mix, and the 90s saw an absolute explosion of remixes thanks to the power of samplers. Today, remixing is an essential skill for any producer. So in this video, I'll show you my go-to techniques for crafting a remix that energizes the dance floor and stands out in any set. So for this example, I'll be using my next single, created under my alter ego RAZE.D, called Into the Fire. Okay, so let's dive in. Okay, so firstly, let's take a listen to the track. I've got a little snippet of it here because before we remix it, we need to just figure out what it is we're going to do. What kind of springs to mind ideas-wise when we listen to it? What parts do we want to use? What direction do we want to take it in? You know, you've got to think about, if you're a DJ, you've got to think about something that you're going to play. You know, not all of the parts in the track are going to be suitable to use in a dance remix, especially in my sort of style, which is more of the kind of groovy house vein. So, got to really listen out to what's in the track and just to sort of try and get a picture of what you might use. Think about other tracks that you like in the style that you play, and just think if you can sort of interpret the parts within this into the style that you like. You know, it's remixing is actually quite tricky. Not every track can be remixed, although I do actually believe that anything can be remixed into anything, and I'm living proof of that. I've literally done thousands of remixes over the course of my career. So yeah, and I think even if you end up just using a small syllable of a vocal from the original, or even if you end up just using, you know, a drum beat, a snare, it's still a remix, right? Because the line got blurred with remixing. Remixing for the dance floor, sort of, it was almost like a complete reproduction. You were really remaking the track, you know. I think the term remix is kind of doesn't do it any favors, or it does it an injustice, actually. It's not actually a remix. I think a remix would be to sort of take the parts that you've got and just sort of extend them, speed them up, slow them down, whatever it is. But often is the case, and you'll see with this one, the remix can actually be a complete reproduction, a completely new thing altogether. So let's take a listen. I'm just going to play a sort of small section of the track, and we'll get the sort of verse and the chorus, so you can hear the parts, and you can hear then my decision to what I decided to use within it.
Waiting for you, making up your mind, and which way will you go? I don't know what to do. Stop myself from overthinking. One day you say, I wish that I had done this in a different way. It's too late for us. I don't have the time for waiting. We threw it out into the fire. We stand and watch it burning down. Can't put it out, it's come too far. Burning down to the ground.
Okay, so you can hear, that's actually my voice. This is all my project, my alter ego, so to speak. So I'm very familiar with the track, and I'm very familiar with, you know, the lyrics and all of the different parts. So I've got a bit of a head start. Often is the case when you're coming to remix something, that you have to really familiarize yourself with what's in the original track that you're going to be remixing, right? I've got the advantage of knowing the track inside out. So I've already got an idea of where I want to go with it, okay? Also as well, because it's my track, I have the stems, right? I've been able to separate it out into the individual constituent parts: vocal, bass, synths, drums, all right? Also as well, you could also hear that the track is slow. It's 100 beats per minute, which is, it's a fine line. Can you take it to a dance tempo? Ask yourself that question. 100 beats per minute is, for me, it's on the edge. I'm going to be speeding it up, and you'll see, to 128. And 128 is actually 28 beats per minute faster than the original. So you have to just figure out if you can actually take it that fast. Okay, if you haven't got the stems, what would you do there? Well, I think I've already showed you in a previous video. We've got this program called Stem Roller, which is free. You can download it. And you can actually use it not only for separating the stems from YouTube videos or for any video. You type in the name of the video there and it will just download it. You can also just drop a track on there, and it will separate the stems. Okay, but I don't need to do that because I've got the stems. And the stems are here. You can see I've got my folder of stems here. Look, so look, I've separated it into drums, bass, synth, guitar, vocals, etc, etc, etc. Now, also as well, I've made a note of the tempo, so I know what tempo it's at for me to warp it. So, direction-wise, which way did I want to go? Well, I've already mentioned that I'm currently loving really sort of almost very skippy kind of jacking, sort of minimal sort of house, rolling, jacking, minimal. That's always been my vibe, and I like things that kind of make your shoulders move a little bit. So let's take a look at what we've done here. Now, I'm just going to break it down because it's already been created. I've got the full arrangement, actually. So let's take a look at where we started. We started with a kick drum. Now, that kick drum, you can see there, we've actually sampled it from another track. Now, I've made another video about that, so please check out the kick sampling video that I made. Okay. Now, and also, what I did with the kick is I added this thing called snapback. And snapback allows you to put like a little pre-roll. If I take it off, you'll hear the difference. If I take snapback off, with it on, it's just creating that little suction before the kick. It sort of emphasizes the transient in a weird sort of way. This is a really great plugin by Cable Guys. Highly recommended. I bought it as soon as it came out. So, because I used to do this kind of thing, and it would take a long time to be able to just sort of get a piece of audio and put it just before, like the pre-roll, I called it. But now this plugin does it for you. It's great. So, you know, I'm not doing a lot to it. The kick is as pretty much as it is. I've sort of made it a little bit shorter. Now, the bass line. Onto the bass line. Let's take a listen to what I did. I've gone for this kind of vibe. Well, actually, no. Let's go to the other part of the drums. I've got a loop here. The loop goes like this. You'll hear it's a very jacking, skippy loop. For the purpose of this remix and for this example, basically that loop is pretty much the whole thing. It contains all the parts I need, and I've kind of just left it as it is, really. I've not embellished it with anything else other than this percussion loop here. Let's take a listen. Cool. What I did with the main loop, though, is I've done something quite funky. I've done a sidechain to take away the first initial hit of it, but then I've used another sidechain, this Devious Machines duck sidechain, to turn down the level of the hat, because the hat is really loud in comparison to all the rest of the sounds. So let's just have a listen to that. So that enables me to turn down that hat there within the loop. I felt like it was getting in the way there. It was too loud. So that's the drums, basically. Now, these drums are all bussed up through a drum bus. And this drum bus, you'll see here, has a filter. And the filter is used for me in the arrangement. I'm able to automate the filter, and you can see the automation lines there, and that automates the entire drum bus. Rather than it automating or filtering individual elements, I tend to just do the lazy man approach, which is to filter just the bus itself. So everything's bussed to this drum bus, which means I can then do all sorts of stuff with it. I've got a drum bus, you know, that's my processing there. We'll look at processing in another video. This is more about the sort of constituent parts and the sort of we'll look at an arrangement of it as well. Okay, so there's my drums. Let me take the drums off and then we'll look at the bass line. Now the bass line is made with this beautiful machine. It's the ABL3 by Audio Realism. It's one of my favorite acid. It's the TB303 emulator. Why do I like this one? Why don't I use like the Roland TB303? Good question. I think it's because my good friend Denny uses it and he recommended it to me and I absolutely love it. You can sort of get different types of 303 models out of it. And I've not used a sequencer on it. I've actually programmed my own bass line. Let's take a listen to it. Now there's a little bit of distortion on there coming through, and it's on purpose. I wanted to leave a little bit of distortion there, just so it sort of pokes through. Now then, this pattern. Let's take a look at this pattern. I'm going to put the kick on so you can see the interaction. Let me take off all the plugins as well, and you can hear what it sounds like. Sort of classic 303 sound, but it's raw here that's doing a lot of the work. I'm using a multiband raw, and then I've saturated the mid-range, but I'm also automating the frequency, and you can see there, look, if you go here, you'll see. Okay, so to get that sort of 303 thing coming through at some points. So that's the. So it's 120 beats per minute, skippy, groovy, sort of jacking house, with a rolling bass line like this. So that's my direction. This is the kind of music that I play. It's and I like this vibe. That's the essence of the groove. Right, now let's look at the vocal. Because what I did as well when I first listened to the vocal, I had a very specific idea of what I wanted to use, and I've ended up using this part here. And I'm using the chorus. In the breakdown, you'll hear here that the chorus, the full chorus comes through. And this day's over now. You'll hear that I've actually pitched it up. Why did I pitch it up? Well, I played around with the pitch and I felt like it got a little bit more exciting. My original version is quite deep and dark and, dare I say it, quite sort of down sounding. I wanted to lift it a bit, so I've pitched it up by 3 semitones, and it just gives it like almost a female sound, which makes it a little bit more sort of exciting. And if we play it, the vocal here over this section, you'll get an idea of kind of what I was going for. So this is the breakdown into the drop. And weirdly, it took a lot of sort of figuring out, but I really think that works. I really like the kind of idea of it going into a vocal section. It's a bit twisted, sounds a bit weird, comes back out into that groove. So the main parts that I use is Into the Fire, this section. Heavily processed. Let's take a look at the processing. What have we got here? Now, Infiltrator by Devious Machines is, without doubt, I say this a lot. It gets used a lot in most of my productions, and I absolutely love it because you can really mangle things beyond belief. And some of the presets that I really like are the filter ones on an LFO. So it's an LFO. It's just a preset. So it's kind of moving around. And then I've just put a little bit of delay on there, and that's it. The duck there is to sort of pump it in the track. So as it's okay, so without all of this stuff, what does it sound like? Let's take a listen. Into the fire. Like I say, I've pitched myself up and I've put all this echo stuff on there. So Infiltrator's amazing for creating something completely out there and different. All right, the next part of the vocal I use is one called Atmos. What I did was bounce down this vocal, or I froze it, and then I took a part of it and I created this loop, and it sounds like this. If I just play this section. That's Into the Fire, but I've looped the delay at the end. Fire, fire. And I've panned it. I've got an LFO here, a Max for Live LFO, to pan the actual pan on the mixer page. You can see that happening. Oh, you can't. It doesn't actually show you, but you can hear it moving around. Okay, so that's sort of a resampled version of the main vocal. All right, on to the stabs. So the stabs are quite an integral part of this. Let's take a listen to the stab. I'll break them all down into each one. So I wanted, again, these sort of like almost deep house kind of stabs. The whole thing sounds like this. How did I achieve that? Well, you can see there are 3 different stabs. We'll start with this first one. The first one, that's great. So let me take all the plugins off and you can hear what it sounds like. It's just sort of pedestrian kind of stab sound. Really simple stab, but then I put an echo on there to give it a little bit of movement. You can see the parts. I'll play a kick so you get a context. And then I thought, well, it's still a little bit too static and a little bit boring, so I've gone to this plugin here, which always works an absolute treat on the atonal stab, which is called DS Tantra. Tantra, this beast, is a beast. Again, it's just a preset, filter ghosts, and listen to what this does to it. This is... And then just some EQ to take out some of the low end there. So it's Tantra's doing a lot of work on that sound in particular. The main, then we've got this one called Sax. So let's take a listen to this on its own. So let's have a look at the parts. The parts are, it's a question and answer type stab. You've got the first one, this sort of whip sound that goes then into the Tantra sound. Okay, so how do we get that sound? It sounds like sort of like a whip. Sound. On its own, without all of the plugins, it's again quite a boring sound. I've actually used a sax sound. If you just take this off. That's it. Heavily processed. The first thing that I've used is this snapback again, the Cable Guys thing, and I've got a reverse room reverb going into it, which creates that suck effect. Look at that. Great. And then I wanted some delay to sort of delay into. I've used a bit of Saturn there, some to just to sort of bring out the mid range a little bit there. And then echo, which is one of my sort of most used Ableton effects there. Panning on a ping pong. Shade, we'll come to that in a minute because shade is great. Look at this. This is UVI shade, absolutely unbelievable EQ and filter. Again, I've just picked a preset. I wanted a moving effect. I wanted something to move around, so it's just sort of animating the sound. Instead of it just being a straight sound. So you're getting all of this movement there. And then this stab here is kind of fits with the other top stab. It's doing the same pattern. I'll play them all together. Now, how do we achieve this? This main stab, without all of the effects on, is again just a stab taken from. I've got stab packs. It's as Sennheiser stab. You find these things on Splice. That's just the stab, like that. Again, I needed to do something with it. Drum bus is really good for creating the transients. I've increased the transients on there, bit of wider. But the main thing again is this delay rack verb. I have actually got here, if we listen to this, I've got the glow reverb, which is something that I really like. And then I've got a dry chain and then a chain there, which has got, what's that got on it? Nothing else. No, it's turned off. So that's all making that sound. It's kind of automated. You can see the automation there. Look, if we go there, delay, right, look at that. Mixing in this glow reverb thing. Which has also got a delay on the reverb itself with some panning. So it all comes from this rack, the vibe of it. You listen to this when you get to here. So I'm creating sort of quite a bit of movement within these three sounds. They're all kind of moving around and dancing around. Bit loud in the mix, actually. I'm still working on the mix at the moment. So there we go. That's that. Again, let's go back to the vocal because I want to show you how I created this this interesting vocal effect. It's down to this plugin called Shade. Shade. I'm using another one of the presets here. Yeah, the plugin won't open. It's another one of the presets, and you can hear that it's. It's like a phaser filter kind of automated thing that moves around. This plugin I just picked up recently. It was on sale, and it's, again, I've used it a load. Great. Of course, we've got some fills as well. You probably heard those in the track. Let's take a listen. And then onto the arrangement. Well, the arrangement is kind of like what I wanted to do here is I'll just briefly go through it because I want to keep this video length quite short. So we've got at 30 seconds, we've got the bass line coming in, and then we've got a sort of 16 bar section there, and then we've got this breakdown, and then we come in here, we start to introduce the stabs. We introduce them a little bit by bit, so they all kind of join in at some point. So it's that first stab like that, then this one comes in, and then the third stab comes in. They all join together at this point, and then the stabs come out to give you a little bit of a break, and then we've got this breakdown which we've heard. And this stab here, let's take a listen. This is another stab. I think it's the same stab using the same rack and just automating the stuff within there. So the rack is what's giving you the movement. I've got a delay. It's the Delay Eternity by Arturia. A fantastic delay. It does all sorts of trippy stuff. I really do love this delay. And look, and it's panning as well. I've got a pan man on there to keep it panning with a bit of filter, and you can see the filter there is being modulated or automated to bring it in over that period of time there. And that is it. Of course, there's a lot of work gone into there in terms of the arrangement, but again, it's sort of a kind of standard tech house-ish, I'd say tech house, groovy house arrangement. You've got your DJ intro, you've got a DJ outro, sorry there, you've got a DJ outro, your bass line comes in, you've got a couple of breakdowns, you've got a small one there, which happens after about a minute, and then you've got another one which happens in the middle there, that's your main break. And then it's sort of all about the groove, really. And the groove, as I said, you bring in the groove, and then you start to, well, in this instance, I've started to bring in the samples, the stab samples, as it sort of grooves along. And then we've got a small break here, and it's just, then it's, this is the sort of DJ outro. And that's your DJ outro. So it's kind of quite simple. In terms of effects, we've got very few. There's a crash. I like to use a crash. We've got a crash effect. Nothing much going on there, like a sort of reverse. That's quite nice. Some little reverse ones. Whoosh. The real fills are really nice. And then we've also got a snare roll as well, which I've taken, but looks like I've quantized it. Nope, it's a swung snare roll. You can hear that. It's not a straight it's a snare roll that goes with the groove. It works with the groove. And I think I've achieved something that I would play. I've managed to take something that's quite dark and underground and sort of trippy and gothic, maybe, into something that's an absolute house banger. Okay, so I hope that gave you some ideas of how you can remix tracks. This track in particular was a particular challenge because it was quite a dark track and it's got an interesting vocal. So it had to be thought about. It's how you think about how you're going to use the parts. So I had to think carefully about how I was going to use it and really kind of play around with the vocal and just to see what groove it fitted with. And I think that's the point of remixing. You can't just sort of take something and slap it on top of something else. You've got to really be considerate about, does it work with this particular style? If it doesn't work with this particular style that you like, then you've got to rethink it and think maybe, well, I don't use that vocal, or maybe I don't use that and just use that instead. So there's a lot of experimentation, there's a lot of playing around, but hopefully you can see from this that you can literally take any track and make it into a dance floor banger. If you've got any questions or if you've got any comments, please hit me up in the comments section. Let's keep the conversation going.